Our first lesson in Chapter 3 is all about multiplying by tens. Let's take a look at what some of these problems look like. We're going to start with some pretty easy problems, and then we're going to move on to some problems that are a little bit more challenging, but you guys already have the skills to complete these problems based off of what you've done in Chapter 2. Let's take a look at our first problem. Here we have 30 times 20. Now with this problem, it's really easy for us to solve. We see our zeros. We know that we can cross out zeros as long as we add them back into the end of our product. So what we can do with those two zeros is cross them out, add them in. Now all we have to do is multiply 3 times 2, and that gives us 6. The reason being, we can change 20 and think about how many tens that is. 30 times 2 tens, 20 is equal to 2 tens. If I multiplied these, I would get 60 tens, and then I know that my tens place is the second place in my place value, so I would have my 60. That 0 would end up in my tens place, which means I need to have another place with my ones, and I would get 600. So the trick with these problems, cross out those zeros, just make sure you add them back at the end of your product. Here's another one. We have 40 times 20. I'm going to cross off my 2 zeros, add them into the end of my product. Now I have 4 times 2, and that's an easy fact for me. That's 8. I want you to go ahead and solve these 3 problems, 50 times 10, 60 times 20, and 70 times 40. Cross out those zeros, add them into the end of your product, and then you just have a basic fact to solve. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at 50 times 10. We're going to cross those 2 zeros out. We're going to add them into the end of our product. 5 times 1 is 5. Over here, we're going to cross these 2 zeros out, put them at the end of our product. 6 times 2 is 12, so I have 1,200. This one, cross my 2 zeros out, add them to the end of my product. 4 times 7 is 28. Pretty simple. Cross those zeros out, add them in. All right, let's take a look at a problem that's a little bit more complicated because both of our numbers do not have zeros. Here we have 40 times 15. Now we talked last chapter about 4 different ways that we can multiply. We talked about the area model, distributive property or expanded form, partial products, and then the regrouping method. We can use any of those methods to solve this problem. Here's our area model. So we would have 40 on this side, and then we would expand 15 to 10 and 5. Multiply 40 times 10 using those strategies that we just talked about. So we would cross out those zeros, add them in. 4 times 1 is 4. And then 40 times 5, we could do the same thing. We can cross out this 1 0 here, put it in. 4 times 5 is 20. Now all I would have to do would be add 400 plus 200, and I would get a product of 600. We can use another method to solve this. A lot of you liked the regrouping method. So what I can do first if I'm going to use the regrouping method is cross out my 0 and my 1s and place it down in my product. Now all I have to do is multiply my 4 times 5, which would give me 20. So I put my 0, carry my 2, and now I'd multiply 4 times 1, which would be 4, plus 2 more is 6. So there is my product. If you're going to use the regrouping method, please make sure that the number that has the 0 in the ones place is the number at the bottom. That way we can cross out that 0 and place it in our ones, and then all we have to worry about is our tens. Either way, we get 600. We could use partial products for this or expanded form, and we would get 600 as well. Let's take a look at another problem. Here we have 34 times 20. Now, if you don't like it written this way, you could always write this 20 times 34. The commutative property tells me I can flip my numbers, no problem at all. And I can use area model or regrouping or any of my other methods to solve this problem. I'm going to use area model and regrouping just to check my work. So on this side I have my area model. I put 20 on my side and then expanded 34 to 30 times 4. I would have 20 times 30 here. So again, I would cross out those 2 zeros, add them into my product. 3 times 2 is 6. And then over here I would multiply 20 times 4. I would cross the 0 out, put it down in my product. 4 times 2 is 8. And when I add those two partial products, I would get a product of 680. Now over here with my regrouping method, I can do the same thing. I'm going to cross out my 0 in my ones place and start by putting that in my product. Then I'm going to go ahead and multiply 2 times 4, which is going to give me 8. Then I'm going to go over to my tens place, so 2 times 3, which would give me 6. So I get 680 both ways. I want you to go ahead and try this next problem. You can use any method that you want to solve it, and then we're going to go ahead and share our answers using area and regrouping. Okay, let's go ahead and check our work. So we have area model over here on the left. I'm going to cross out these two zeros, place them down in my product. 4 times 5 is 20, so I get 2,000. Over here for my next partial product, I'm going to cross that 0 out, put it down. And 5 times 6 is 30. When I add these two partial products, I'm going to get 2,300 as my final product. Over here with regrouping, please make sure you're putting that number with the 0 in the ones place on the bottom of your regrouping problem. I'm going to cross that 0 out, put it down in my product. Now I'm going to multiply 5 times 6, which gives me 30. So I place my 0, carry my 3. 5 times 4 is 20, plus 3 more gives me 23, so I get 2,300 as my product. Go ahead and solve this next problem, 70 times 55. You can use any method you'd like. So here I have the area model, 70 times 50. I'm going to cross those two zeros out, place them in my product. 7 times 5 is 35. And then I have 70 times 5, so I cross 1 0 out, place it in my product. 7 times 5 is 35. When I add these two partial products together, I'm going to get 3,850 as my final product. I'm going to go over to my regrouping method, cross out my 0, place it down on my product. 7 times 5 gives me 35. I place my 5 and carry my 3. Then I go to my tens place. 7 times 5 is 35, plus 3 more is 38, and I get the same product, 3,850. Here's our next problem. It's a word problem. Raphael biked 10 miles a week and ran 20 miles a week. How many miles will he have biked in 26 weeks? Go ahead and solve this problem. Now it's important that we understand what the problem is asking us. It wants to know how many he biked in 26 weeks, and my information in my problem, I have more than what I need. So the first piece that I have is he biked 10 miles and then he ran. My problem's not asking me about how far he runs. It's just asking about him biking. So I can cross out what he ran for, and I just want to focus on him biking. So if he biked 10 miles a week and he did this for 26 weeks, I want to know how many miles he biked. So I'm going to write my multiplication problem, 10 times 26. This one's really easy for me to solve. I don't even need to worry about drawing a model. What I'm going to do is cross that 0 out, place it in my product. Now all I have is 1 times 26, which gives me 26, and there is my product. 260 miles is what he biked. Okay, one last word problem for us for today. Bryce reads for 13 hours per week. How many hours will he read in 50 weeks? Take a second, think about it, and then solve this problem. All right, we need to set up our multiplication problem. So we have 50 weeks and 13 hours per week. So we would have 50 times 13, or 13 times 50, however you wrote it. I'm going to go ahead and set up my area model and regrouping to solve this problem. So I'm over here in my area model. I'm going to multiply 50 times 10. I'm going to cross out my zeros. I have two zeros. 5 times 1 is 5. Then I have 50 times 30, or times 3, excuse me. I cross that 0 out, put it down. 5 times 3 is 15. When I add 500 plus 150, I get 650 as my product. For this next problem, again, when you're doing your grouping, please make sure the number with the 0 is on the bottom. So I'm going to cross that 0 out, place it in my ones place. 5 times 3 is 15. I put my 5, carry my 1. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 more is 6. Either way, I get 650. I go back into my problem, and I want to know how many hours. So I have 650 hours is how much Bryce reads in 50 weeks. That's our lesson for today. Again, the important parts are when we're multiplying and we have a 0 at the end of our number, not in the middle, at the end, we can cross that out and place it at the end of our product and then multiply our pieces. If we are multiplying using regrouping, that number with the 0 at the end of the number should go on the bottom so we can cross it out and put that 0 down in our product and then multiply our other pieces. That's our lesson for today. See you tomorrow.